take a couple of minutes here and go over the BattleApps workbook, maybe hit some of the main sections, and answer some questions for people participating in the program. So it's a PDF file that's fillable. The first page is basically some contact information, pretty standard stuff. Then we get into page 2 and we get to talk a little bit about the project. Each of these fillable fields are max out at about 240 characters. So we're looking for some very concise and short descriptions of your project by answering each of these questions. You know, what's the problem your customer faces? How does your app solve this problem? What's the benefit of your product? So if you can go through and fill that out as best possible. Then we get to this customer problem statement. I'm trying to get the participants in this to really think about and pick out an example of someone who would be a potential client or potential customer for this app. So it starts off with I am blank. So I'm looking for a very specific answer there. So a specific individual. You could say something like a student. You might say I'm an accountant. You might say I'm a senior citizen. You're looking for some sort of specific example of who you expect to be using this, and then it continues with I am trying to, and then another blank. Okay, so you're trying to have some sort of, you're trying to solve sort of problem or get something done, or there's something you aspire to. So, you know, maybe I'm a senior citizen and I'm trying to learn how to paint, but there's a problem. But my time is limited because I have meetings all the time. Because answers the sort of the in-depth reason why the but is in the way, and then which makes me feel. So sometimes we talk about, when you're looking at a customer's problems or a solution to a problem, that, you know, what's the underlying emotional feeling, or what's the underlying perception of that. So if you could perhaps maybe fill this out as best you can, it just helps sort of fully flesh out, or more flesh out, who you think is working or might be want to use your application. And again, we get some more description fields, a little bit of background about research. How do you make money? And not that every one of these projects has to be a money-making commercial project, but it probably at least has to be self-sustaining. You know, so what's the process, or what's the underlying foundation for that? How many people might be able to use this? Where do they live? And then there's a field here for the mock-up link. So when you finish your mock-up document, you can put that link in here, and we'll be able to have a look at it here. Just a quick overview of the development sessions, just so you know what's happening and when. I've got 2 documents here with customer identification. So, I mean, you can even post in or copy in a picture into this picture field. Give your customer a name. Is their name Abigail? Is it Stanley? You'll find that actually helps develop the picture of who your ideal customer is in your head. On the left here, we get some basic demographic information. Again, sort of picture what kind of situation or what kind of demographics they fall into. Describe the customer, describe their social condition, their professional condition, anything that you can think about that might identify them. And this is interesting, favorite products or brands. Like, what other products or brands or activities or things do they associate with? What specific problem are they having in lining up with your intended app? And do they have any overlying opinions or attitudes, or they find themselves in a certain social characteristic, psychographic, you know, what do they think about things? You know, kind of flesh out that total sort of picture of your customer. And I've actually got two fields here. So picture 2 different customers. You might have a couple of different segments that your application you might appeal to. I've included a couple of templates, and I will briefly touch on these through some of the sessions, but I'm definitely not going to go in depth. But I do encourage you maybe to do some Googling and look at what design thinking is, maybe dig a little deeper. Look at what the lean business model is and dig a little deeper. the value proposition. What value proposition, what value do you give your customers? And the story branding model. Okay, story branding. And all these are Googleable online. I'll leave those to you to sort of do some more research at your discretion. I'd like to keep this as simple as possible for those that want sort of an uncomplicated process, but I thought I'd include these just as some background nudges. We're going to go over a little bit of the technical requirements for building an app. We're not going to get into any programming, but we're just going to describe the environment in which applications live in the real world. And we're going to look at the difference between the front end and the back end, and we're going to get you to fill in some of that information. Again, we're going to cover some more of this in class. And reveal some of that. So there'll be some videos posted on these things, and specifically a little later on. General description field for your app. Tell us the story of the app, tell us how it works, tell us why it's important. And actually I just added this section in version 4. I had some questions, so I kind of thought the feature list might come out a little more within describing your app, but I just recently added this by request, just to say, okay, well, what specific features does your app have? You may have 2 or 3 or 4. I've included 10 fields here, and that's probably more than enough for most people. Don't feel like you have to fill every one of them in. If there's 1 or 2 or 3 main features, which is probably the case for most people, that's fine. Don't feel like you have to fill in all of these. A couple of printable templates so you can design and draw and ideate a little bit there. And then at the end there's some resources. So there's the link for mock-ups. There's a video on the team site just to introduce you to that. We'll cover that a little bit in class as well. Similarly, there's a link for Intuit's got a version of design thinking they call Design for Delight. And that's an interesting process to go through. Again, I'll touch a little bit on that during our sessions, but I thought I'd include these links in the back page, so you'd have something to go upon. So that's the document. I hope that's given an overview of what's there. We're going to cover in detail more of these fields and what I want you to fill in our sessions online. Please attend the ones that you can in class and/or streaming online when we do it, and they're also going to be available online afterwards in the form of a recording. So good luck, and we'll see you all at the next class.